Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. We've got some brilliant guests on my show tonight. We've got Robert Fox, he's from the Evening Standard. Also got Richard Tice, he's the leader of Reform UK. Back as left in the corner, we've got the former leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Vince Cable. We've also got Quentin Letts from the Daily Mail. He's going head-to-head tonight with Vince Cable. We've got the lovely Lady Victoria Herbie. She's going to be talking about the Royals. And another dose of common sense. Gary the Cabbie is back. But first, let's go to the news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top story. The Prime Minister has praised Egypt for its efforts in trying to deliver aid to civilians in Gaza. After meeting the country's president, Rishi Sunak said Palestinians are also victims of Hamas and expressed his condolences for the loss of lives. He also stressed the importance of opening a safe corridor to Gaza.
Something we have prioritised consistently is getting the Rafah crossing opening. It's been a feature of all my conversations, and I'm very pleased that that will now imminently happen. We announced an increase in our funding for humanitarian aid into the region, and when I met with President Sisi earlier today, he and I had a good discussion about how the UK can provide practical assistance on the ground to ensure the sustainability of that aid through the crossing to the people who need it.
Sir Keir Starmer says former Tory voters have put their trust and their confidence in the Labour Party after they overturned Conservative majorities to win 2 by-elections. The video we're about to show does contain some flash photography. In Tamworth, Sarah Edwards overturned a Conservative majority of more than 19,000. Meanwhile, Alistair Stratham took Mid-Bedfordshire with a 20.5% swing. That's the largest Labour by-election win since 1945. Sir Keir says it's history in the making.
Well, these are huge victories. Either of these results would have been extraordinary. Both together they are historic. These are seats that we've never won before, or rarely won before, and we've had swings of over 20%, and we've now had 4 by-elections with swings of over 20% if you take Selby and Rutherglen as well. So, you know, that is a very, very important investing of confidence and trust in a changed Labour Party.
Well, Conservative Party chairman Greg Hands is less impressed. He says Labour's wins are not that significant.
Labour hardly improved their vote at all, and in fact went down in Mid-Bedfordshire slightly. But I don't think that will have an impact on the general election. Clearly, we need to recognise that a large number of our Conservative voters did not come out yesterday in Mid-Bedfordshire and Tamworth, despite having excellent candidates in Festus Akinbusoya and in Andy Cooper. So we need to work harder. We need to make sure that people get the government message that we are delivering against the 5 priorities, making progress.
West Mercia Police says a man in his 60s has died after getting caught in fast-flowing floodwater in Shropshire. He's believed to be the 3rd fatality as Storm Babette continues to cause severe weather conditions. This afternoon, a passenger plane came off the runway at Leeds Bradford Airport while landing in those windy conditions. However, there were no reported injuries. The Met Office has issued a 24-hour red weather warning in central and north-east Scotland as further heavy rainfall is expected. The Director General of the BBC will be challenged next week over why the corporation refuses to call Hamas terrorists. On Wednesday, Tim Davie will address a meeting of the Tory party's 1922 committee of backbench MPs. Senior sources have told GB News Mr Davie will be expected to answer questions about the BBC's reporting of the Israel-Hamas conflict, including their coverage of a rocket attack on a Gaza hospital. The meeting was originally called last month to address what some Tory MPs see as bias against the Conservative government. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Now let's get back to Lee Anderson's Real World.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. And tomorrow it's going to be 2 weeks since Hamas launched their surprise attack on the people of Israel. And tonight, I'm glad to be joined by Robert Fox, who's the defence editor of the Evening Standard. We're living in a changing and dangerous world, Robert. This attack certainly took many of us by surprise, and some of the reporting we've seen over the past 24, 48 hours has done nothing to help.
I think it was always going to be like that. It's quite an easy touch to say, you know, that the messenger has got it wrong. This has been, I know a lot of the people involved, I mean, on the reporting side, it has been acutely difficult because there's a lot of information they simply can't get at. And there are big questions which need to be investigated forensically by reporting. And, you know, the way media operates these days, they don't allow you the time to be forensic. For instance, let's talk about the bomb or the projectile on the hospital. I've seen things like that before, but not to that degree, particularly in Sarajevo, where we had 3 occasions. It took weeks to identify what projectile was done and where it came from. Now, it's understandable that you rush to judgment because that is the way in the social media world it comes around. But I do think the more experienced reporters could do better in hoisting the health and safety warnings about this kind of material.
So do you think the more experienced journalists, as you say, should take a little bit more care? Or are they actually bothered, Robert? Because we see, I'm not going to name names of channels and people that's actually done this, but they seem far too quick to get that headline out there rather than fact check. And this creates no end of problems, not just in this country, but around the world.
Well, this has been, I've been in the game for just over 56 years. Yeah. And I've done all media, including social media, funny enough. And social media has changed the game. And you have to rush, and it's comment. And it's a virtual world very often. You can see it, read the Twitter feeds on Ukraine, on Russia, on Palestine, and on Gaza. And the old maxim does stand. There's that world, and there's IRW in the real world. For me, it's been extremely interesting having the odd 24 or 36 hours gap where you can reflect, rootle among the material and say, look, this is what we know. this is what is being speculated about, and this is what we don't know.
So a common thing that's often said to children is, and certainly my mum and dad would have said this to me many, many years ago, is do not believe everything you read in the papers. And that I never really thought much about that. And then, you know, as you get older and you see life a little bit more, that is certainly true. But with the false headlines...
That's just the starting point.
It is a starting point. But with the false headlines you see, like we've seen over the past 48 hours, surely there's going to come a time when people just not believe anything they see on social media or anything they read in the papers.
Well, that's the job that needs to be done, because really it should be in the core curriculum. They don't talk about it on either side of the house. Actually, how you handle information in the virtual information era. I talk to kids in schools. I do Robert Peston speakers in schools, and they are engaged in it. They want to know. They want to talk to people. So the thirst is to know. And there's a gap. That's what's happening. What we're reporting is things like, after the incident in the hospital, I'm not going to go into the whys, wherefores, who was to blame, but you get Palestinians on the streets across the world. You get them in the West Bank, but you get them in the North Country on the campuses. Now, should you be reporting those as an equivalent event to what is actually going on in the Middle East? Big question.
So I guess
who's behind it?
There is a message sometimes the press want to get out there, because each different media outlet have probably got their own agenda. Well, we know that happens. But also, the consumer, the reader, sometimes believes what they want to believe, Robert. That's the thing, isn't it?
There's also that, and there's also, I'm afraid, Lee, an ever shorter concentration span. So you get the sound bites. I mean, Twitter, frankly, or X, as we now have to call it, under Mr. Musk's leadership now, is an absolute curse. Because, first of all, it was 245 characters. Well, this is nonsense for a very, very complicated story. Some people, it must be said, have been brilliant at handling, and one Vladimir Zelensky has been outstanding. By the way, the Palestinians are also very adroit at this, particularly from their media centres. This is part of the thing. You've got what's going on in Gaza, but a lot of the political and thought action and propaganda is coming from Beirut or Qatar or somewhere else in the Gulf.
So the media outlets that are putting out their misleading headlines, and you're quite right what you say, sometimes the actual full article is nothing like the headline. It's completely different. But this does nothing to restore peace. It does nothing to help the people of Israel or Palestine. All it does is stoke up hatred around the world. We've seen demonstrations in different countries. We had one on Whitehall last night. People are coming out because of some of these headlines that they're reading in the newspapers.
I don't think it's necessarily they're being driven by the headlines. The headlines are a useful tool, can we put it like that? We have to remember the great saying, and it's not original to him, of Bill Clinton, denial ain't just a river in Egypt. What is so difficult about this, and I've worked in Israel for 30, 40 years, and the occupied territories, and been in Gaza, and got stoned there, not with marijuana, but with rocks. But the fact is that I've travelled backwards and forwards, and this is what, and I'm showing my age here, sorry to stress that, people aren't talking to each other in the way that they did in the past.
There's no silver bullet, if you like, for this problem. But if you was tasked, Robert, in solving this problem, if you could wave your magic wand, what would you do? Just get people talking around the table?
I would get people talking, and I would get people not talking down both sides of the street. I think there's a very sensible element in the middle of the Israeli government now with people like Benny Gantz. Benny Gantz and one of his predecessors, Ehud Barak, who has been talking in The Economist, actually, and those are sane words you can read in the British press. Your silver bullet, the Arabs, the serious Arabs, have got to start talking instead of running away and finding excuses, as we heard because of the hospital thing and with Joe Biden, of running away and saying we're not going to talk. They are responsible, and I mean the Qatars, but particularly Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and of course the authority on the West Bank with its 87-year-old president.
We have got to talk. The world's a better place, I think, if people talk from all sides of the argument. No easy solutions, but that part of the world, as I would dislike, and I'm being kind now, to actually live in that part of the world, the uncertainty, the deaths, the bombs. I mean, you've been there loads of times, Robert. I mean, how do the people really think living with that day after day?
Well, that does become a strain, and that's a British understatement. But the other thing of going between the two Jerusalems, of going to concerts, the kinds of things that Edward Said and Daniel Barenboim did, tremendous fun. And the thing is that I think that the youth on both sides And there's a considerable liberal youth, by that, I mean secular, who are willing to talk to each other. They're interested in each other's music, but they've been restricted on the Israeli side and undoubtedly oppressed by this terrible regime, which is a military regime of Hamas in Gaza.
Yeah. I mean, I had the pleasure to go last year. I spent 3 days in Tel Aviv, I think 3 days in Jerusalem. It's a beautiful country, beautiful people. It was very welcoming. We spent a little bit of time on the West Bank as well. And I guess our prayers are with everybody in that part of the world.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
With the journalists, and I look you straight in the eye, and I would say to politicians, journalists, commentators like myself, stop reinventing the past.
Yeah.
There's far too much. If you hear people at length, in the posh programmes and in the posh magazine, oh, this happened in 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, with the Peel Commission, when Bernadotte was killed and so on. No, circumstances physically, in terms of number and attitude, the balance is so totally different. You've got to address that and not find excuses from the past.
OK, so some wise words from Robert. Thank you, Robert, for joining. That was really helpful. Look, do not go away, because coming up next, we've got Sir Vince Cable and we've got Richard Tice, who's the leader of Reform UK. They're going head-to-head. It could get a bit spicy.
On Mark Dolan tonight in My Big Opinion, following the Tories' double by-election loss, a Labour government is coming. Be careful what you wish for. In My Take at 10, with the world on the brink of war, we need a proper leader in the White House. Joe Biden must be impeached on the grounds of ill health. My Mark Meets guest is TV and radio legend Pat Sharp. Plus, Mike Parry, Edwina Curry, tomorrow's papers and my top pundits. We're live from 9.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tonight, I'm joined by the leader of Reform UK. That's Richard Tice. Thank you, Richard, for coming along. I'm back. It's our left in the corner. He's been here a few times. That's Sir Vince Cable, the former leader of the Liberal Democrats. Thanks, guys. Look, straight to it. The world is a dangerous place at the moment. We have the war in Ukraine, and we have now a possible war in Israel. That has, Richard, some serious knock-on effects, not just around the world, but in the UK as well.
It does, Lee, and it's horrific, absolutely horrific. We all know about what's gone on in Ukraine. This Israeli-Palestinian war is an absolute horror show, and the key thing is to try and prevent it from spreading elsewhere in the Middle East. And the unbelievable thing is there are, of course, some of these militia groups, these terrorist groups, who actually want it to spread. They want to cause more destabilization in the Middle East and further afield. And that is a really, really dangerous situation for the whole world, as you say, not just for the regional conflict. And that's why you're seeing huge diplomatic efforts from the US president, from Rishi Sunak, going to Israel this week. And yeah, the impact on us in the UK, we think it's a long way away. Now there's already discussions about, well, what happens to humanitarian aid? Should we take a whole load of refugees? How much money should we be spending there? And actually, I think many, many people here in the UK will say, hang on, we've just taken huge numbers of refugees from Ukraine. We're sending huge quantities of weapons to Ukraine. Where does this end? Actually, we've got to look after our own. We've got to look after our own British people. And I think that is the sense that I'm getting from people up and down the country.
So, Vince, conflicts around the world, can we do more to help?
There isn't a great deal Britain can do. We were right to condemn the appalling attack on Israel, and we're right now to demand humanitarian assistance. But as far as Britain's concerned, there may be a modest refugee issue, but actually the countries that are going to be faced with refugee crises are countries like Turkey and Libya, not the UK. I mean, what may affect us further down the road is if Iran gets dragged into this crisis. They shut the Straits of Hormuz, we get a massive new energy shock, cost of living crisis. I mean, that's how it will eventually affect us.
You see, Richard, wars around the world, we sort of left this behind 80-odd years ago. We thought that was the end of it. We've seen wars around the world, but it's always a long way away. We don't get personally, we don't feel personally involved in it. But this, actually now with Russia...
These two conflicts, Ukraine is actually, it's in the heart of Europe. And this Middle Eastern war. And the truth is the world is a smaller place, Lee. And the impacts on us. And Vince is quite right. I really worry about the risk of a major increase in energy prices, oil, gas, prices of petrol and diesel at the pumps. All of these things this winter could soar. That's where we've got to be really careful. And of course, that's what the likes of Iran and others in the Middle East, that's what they want. They earn more cash out of that. Serious questions have to be asked. But I think we've got to be clear about this. Frankly, those who fund these wars, the Iranians and the like, there are consequences to this. And I think the Americans, President Biden signing that deal with Iran, that does look as though that's had very serious direct consequences here.
So next year, Vince, we could have a change of president in the United States. We could have Trump. I personally think he'll probably win on the back of what's happening in America and what's happening around the world. Would that be a good thing, you think, to happen? Because people sort of accuse Trump of being a warmonger, but there seemed to be a little bit more peace around the world when he was in charge.
Well, the probabilities of Trump winning are certainly high and maybe rising. I think it would be disastrous for one big reason, that his main instincts are to withdraw into the United States and not to become involved. I mean, the United States historically, post-war, has played a generally very positive role in helping to stabilize things, set the rules. They're currently doing all the right things in Ukraine, for example. And Trump's instincts will be simply to withdraw from all that and create even more chaos than we currently have.
So, Richard, I mean, the United States are traditionally the police force of the world.
And I'm crystal clearly, if Trump had been in power, the Ukraine war would not have happened. And let's remember, many argue, even some of his critics, greatest critics, say that his greatest successes actually were in the foreign policy area. Some of his achievements in the Middle East, starting to bring countries together that had never come to any form of diplomatic arrangement or agreement. Actually, those were real achievements. I don't think Trump would have allowed Afghanistan withdrawal to happen in the way that it happened. So he is a very strong, tough guy. And frankly, I subscribe to the view the best way to guarantee peace is to prepare for war. And that was Trump's mantra. And I think it would have been led to a much more stable place than we've got at the moment.
Vince, I mean, the Middle East got massive problems there. I went to Israel last year and spoke to people on both sides of the argument. I think most ordinary people, wherever you are in the world, just want peace. They want to live side by side, live in harmony, work together or whatever. I've asked before, Vince, what more can we do to try and stabilise that region? Because what the Palestinians want and what maybe the Israelis want, they're never going to come together with certain parts of this argument.
Well, I think that analysis is right. This is a problem without any obvious solution, and all we can do at the moment is to try to stabilise it and prevent the atrocities mounting on both sides. I mean, we were right to take a firm stand in defending Israel's right to protect itself against terrorism. And we should be equally firm that there now needs to be proper humanitarian assistance, that it's completely wrong to cut off food and water from civilian populations. We've got to be balanced in the way we deal with this and, argue that although Israel is absolutely right to protect itself and fight Hamas, they mustn't overreact. They mustn't react through rage rather than justified anger.
But this has been going on for 70 years, as Vince has alluded to, and something's got to change. The only way this changes, frankly, is if you destroy Hamas, and I think that's what Israel is probably trying to do. The issue is that proportionate, and what, tragically, is the collateral damage?
Very odd to empathise with people in a country like that, Vince, because we don't know what it's like to be there, to live there, to see those rockets coming over, to see schools and hospitals destroyed, right around you. So it's a terrifying time. And I sometimes think that people around the world don't always empathise and sympathise with what's going on in these countries, but it's so important that we recognise the struggles they're going through and recognise that they do need support on both sides. Like you say, there's some children and the normal residents in Palestine that probably need that aid to get through to, because they're the victims as well.
Well, empathy is important, but even more important is that, there are rules governing war. I mean, it's the one thing that protects us from complete barbarism, that, conflict is governed by certain rules, including the protection of civilians. And that's the one thing that we as a detached...
I can't get my head around rules in war.
Well, but the tragedy is, of course, Hamas don't abide by any rules whatsoever. And the truth is, they nick our humanitarian aid, they nick the water pipes, they nick the food, and this is what we're dealing with. They control the whole of the Gaza Strip. Be under no illusion. That is the reality. And sadly, many people are sort of fed into the Hamas machine, and you've got to cut the head off the whole machine.
OK, do not go away. Coming up next, we've got the yes or no quiz. I've got Richard and I've got Vince. This is a part of the show, guys, where there's no cowardly behaviour. There's no scurrying about, hiding behind a politician's answer. It's got to be yes or no. If it's not, you get marked down. So we'll start with you, Richard. Should footballers be taking the knee?
No.
Vince?
Yes, if they choose.
Oh, that was a three-word answer. I think I might just give you off for that one.
OK.
Vince, should the BBC licence be scrapped?
No.
Yes.
That's a straight answer. Richard, do you think we should have PR voting in the UK?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
I wonder why, gents. Number 4, Vince, will Donald Trump be the next US president?
Yes, I fear so.
You fear so? Same question to you, Richard.
No, I don't think he will.
OK. And last question, number 5, Richard, should the House of Lords be scrapped?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Right, solid answers there. You did struggle a little bit.
Yes, no, I wanted to add.
He wobbled. It's a wobble.
No, it wasn't a qualification. It was just giving my reasons.
You've done this quiz before. It's yay or a nay. But anyway, do you want to come back on one?
No, I'm not going to change my answer. I just like to add a bit of decoration.
Qualify your answer then.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll come back on one. I think that the Democrats, I don't think Biden will be on the ballot paper in the presidential election. I think there will be a late coronation of a different Democratic candidate. Someone like Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom. And that's why I think that against such a candidate, I think Trump may struggle.
Yeah, if they manage to organise it you're right, but that requires quite a lot of political adeptness.
So playing the tough guy, Vince, could that do it for him?
It could, yeah. I mean, the one thing that really surprises me about Trump is that he hasn't given up on his friendship with Putin.
Okay.
You'd have thought that in the United States, that's a bad position to be in, but he's not given up on it.
Well, is it a friendship, Richard?
Whatever it is.
I think it's two strong men facing up to each other, and I think Trump has a reputation. Don't mess with me. And actually, when he was president, that worked. As I said earlier in the program, he prevented wars, and I don't think we'd be in the situation we're in now. If he had been president after the 2020 election.
So a bit of chest thumping there. So, well, look, do not go away, because coming up next, we've got Vince back around the table. He's here with Daily Mail columnist Quentin Letts. That's a left versus right.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akweer, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Right, it's time for Right versus Left with Quentin Letts and Vince Cable. Let's go for it, guys. Close together, but, let's not get too argumentative. Women's sports. We've seen this week, again, gentlemen, we've seen the fencing competition in America where, let's be honest, a bloke has turned up and he's took on women in this over 70s competition, I think it was, and he's actually beat a Finnish lady and who's, I think she's won this competition many, many times before. But basically, Vince, a bloke's turned up, he's competed against women, and he's won a title. Should this be allowed to happen?
Well, I would hope that the Fencing Association of America stop it, but the number of over 70s fencers in the world, I mean, it must be in single figures. I mean, this isn't exactly a massive problem. And, this whole issue, it depends what kind of sport we're talking about. If you're talking about football, athletics, male characteristics matter. If you're talking about eventing or horse racing, it clearly doesn't, or brain sports, bridge and chess. So it's up to the sporting association to sort it out, not the politicians.
I mean, you're right, Vince. I mean, it's not coming up on the doorstep. People aren't complaining to me or emailing about this sort of. Well, they are on similar issues. But Quentin, obviously, back in the 70s, there was sort of during the World Championships and the Olympic Games. You probably remember. I remember as a kid, we had sex testing. They actually, literally, had to check some of these. I think it was East German athletes, the women, the shot putters.
Oh yeah, the East German shot putters. Yeah, so many of them were strange-looking souls. But there was René Richards, who was a tennis player, who started off life as a man and then competed in women's tennis. Yeah. And I remember at that time, I was watching sport as a youngster. I thought it was all a wind-up. I thought this must be a joke, and it turned out that it was serious. And then it's sort of that practice seemed to go away. And now it's come back, and it's not just in the fencing world. Where I come, by the way, fencing means putting something in the field to stop the cows getting out. But this is a different type of fencing. But I know a few. One of my sisters was a fencer, and they are very serious about their sport. And it's a sport of terrific skill and also stamina. But to me, it's also a sport not necessarily against the person you're fighting. It's within themselves, and you're trying to do your best. And that's what strikes me about this story. The man, or the former man who competed and won, where is the self-satisfaction for that person in beating a woman? Because surely in sport, you're competing against yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be honest, then you should be taking on people.
And there's a reason, Vince, why we have men's sports and women's sports. Now, I did say on GB News earlier this week that if this continues to happen, we could have a situation. It might sound ridiculous, but we live in a ridiculous world at the moment. We could have a situation in 20, 30 years' time where we have a World Championships and Olympic Games where there's no biological women competing because these men, if they keep doing this, they're going to think that's an easy medal, that's an easy world record. I'll compete against the women.
Well, if it did continue to happen, you're right. But actually, most sports, it's now very clear. I mean, the swimming people, the athletics people have said you can't have men competing as women, and they've drawn the line, and that's it. I mean, fencing is such an obscure sport. I mean, there must be 2 schools in Britain that teach it, something like that. And it's about speed of reaction. I'd have thought that men and women could probably compete against each other. I don't know. But does it matter? Does it really matter?
I think, going back to your point about in 30 years' time, or maybe, I don't think any geezer is ever going to be able to take on the likes of Nadia Comaneci for agility or being supple. There are certain things, sort of gymnasts, it's always going to be noticeable where you've come from, so to speak. But also what strikes me about this is a terrible own goal, to use another sporting metaphor, in that I know a couple of youngsters who are transitioning. They are sensitive, vulnerable souls. And what this sort of thing does, it makes people angry. And it makes people angry against trans, and that's unfortunate. And it makes people recoil from trans as opposed to trying to help them.
I think,
and that's what's the pity about it.
I think that's exactly the right reaction. I mean, we shouldn't penalise trans people as a group. You know, they're very
but
small
they're
group.
victims in this.
It's 1 in 200 or something of that order. We shouldn't penalise them as a group because they often have, you know, real problems with adjusting because of 1 or 2 people cheating and trying to play silly games in sport.
Yeah, it's just very selfish. This lady, or not so lady fencer, is just being very selfish. And I looked at the stuff online of after there was an interview after the competition, and there was just a tremendous self-satisfaction evident from this person, rather sort of selfish.
But was he proud of himself because or satisfied because he's actually won a medal or won a title, or because he cheated the system?
I think just self-absorption. Basically. And you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful, Lee Anderson. You're going to have to be in future with the pronouns, because if there's a Labour government, then the pronouns, you know, you'll get taken off to chokey if you're not using the...
oh, come on.
Do you think that's true? But do you think that we're knocking on the door if I misgender somebody?
That is a proposal.
Yeah.
Yes, well, it's a proposal, but the chances of being acted on are 0. I mean, I think this is one area actually where across the political...
So it is a proposal,
when this isn't going to get out of control.
Is it a proposal, and who's proposing this nonsense?
Well, I don't know who's proposed it, but it's certainly not... Well, I can't speak for Starmer, but I can't imagine for a second that he's seriously advocating it.
So, Quentin, do we need some training?
We're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
See you in Wandsworth, except it's too full, so we won't get in there.
Yeah, well, good luck, I think. I mean, I guess some people watching this now will be quite angry.
There will be people angry, but that's the trouble, is it hypes up anger against a vulnerable group because of some silly idiots, a few silly idiots.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Where's it all going to end, Vince, this nonsense, this men competing in women's sport? I actually think it's a bit of a wind-up from some of them. I don't think they...
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
I've had trans people in my surgery talking about the problems they face in everyday life, but this does them no favours at all.
Does them no favours at all. And then it becomes problematic when you get... it impinges on freedom of speech and the J.K. Rowling business, and social media don't help. So I think we all just need to keep very calm, but also hope that the sporting authorities just put a stop to this nonsense.
I think it's another thing, Vince, that never comes up on the doorstep. But again, it is important to talk about it. And it is, I think, I look at people like my mother and my sisters, it's sort of eroding their rights, and young girls as well.
Well, it doesn't come up on the doorsteps, maybe not, but it comes up a lot in social media.
It does.
And at the Labour Party conference, outside the conference, I was walking along and suddenly there was this big fight going on, big protest, and a group of feminists were being surrounded by a group of trans protesters, and things got really nasty, very nasty, and the police had to be there to maintain the peace.
Yeah.
So it may not come up at the doorsteps, but it is causing some political problems.
Yeah, it's real life, Vince, isn't it? It's happening.
No, that is nonsense, but I think you pitched it correctly. I mean, in 20 years as an MP, I think I had 3 or 4 cases of people who'd changed, and, we're really struggling psychologically with some of the problems.
And these are the people that need our support, need to wrap our arms around these people to give them that support, make sure that the best services are available for them. But I keep going back, Quentin, this bloke who is a bloke who's in a women's competition, he's doing them no favours at all. He's creating resentment.
No, not at all. And then you wonder how far it goes in sports like boxing, for instance. We have former blokes getting involved in female boxing matches. Well, I mean, one certainly hopes not, but, it could get really nasty, that.
Yeah, and young girls, I've said it before, Vince, that train from 4 or 5 years old to be swimmers. They put a shift in every single day. The parents give up everything for them. And then, fast forward 10, 15 years, if there's a championship or whatever, some bloke rocks up, who's probably not in the top 500 of swimming events, and then jumps in a pool and beats them by half a length, and he thinks that's good.
And it happens in weightlifting as well.
If that happened, it would be a travesty. And I'm doing weightlifting. I must confess, if there's an over 70s weightlifting championship, I'm going to have
pure steel.
Yeah, pure steel. Fit as a butcher's, aren't you, Vince? Listen, we've got, that's been a great conversation, but I've just been told that there's some common sense incoming. We've got Gary the Cabbie. I'm going on the road with him next. Great news, I'm back in the cab with Gary the Cabbie. It's been a few weeks, Gary, but I guess driving around London this week, there's been a few hot topics, some interesting conversations. What are people talking about in the back of your cab, Gary?
Unfortunately, the main one they're talking about is Israel and Palestine at the moment.
So what's the sort of feeling out there? A lot of sympathy, people angry, people concerned. Gary?
All of that, Lee. They're concerned for what could, if anything, could happen over here.
Yeah.
They're on tender hooks and people are asking me, is it safe? Are we all right? And reassuring all the tourists that there's more police about than you're ever liable to see.
Yeah, I suppose that's one thing I do forget about sometimes, Gary, is that the amount of tourists you get in your cab, probably a lot of Americans and people from there, so they must be really concerned as well.
Yeah, they are, but, you know, Americans are very good. They do just get on with it. They ask you, once you say to them, no, look, there's police, even if you can't see them, they're there. They're fine.
Yeah, so it's a fair point, Gary. Do you think that the tourists, obviously you see a lot of them, feel safe in London?
Yeah, I do. Because more so now, although that you don't see as many police officers about in the main things, around Parliament and the main tourist attractions, there is plenty about.
And I also see that a favourite friend, Mayor Khan, he's obviously he's expanded the ULEZ scheme, which he will argue will help clear up the atmosphere and make it healthier for drivers and for people that live in and around London. That's the sort of argument he would put forward, so we have to listen to that. But has there been a bit of a cock-up this past few weeks over some of the charges on the cameras?
Yeah, I believe so. Like I say, it doesn't affect us because black cab drivers don't have to pay the ULEZ. Yeah. So I don't really get involved with that, but through the news and that. But the more so that people are moaning that the Silvertown Tunnel that isn't even built yet, he's put the prices up already from £4 that it isn't even built yet.
So let me get this right. It's not been built. There's people not travelling through the tunnel. They're not paying to go through the tunnel, but already there's been a price increase.
Price increase from £4 to £6.
But I guess for a bit of balance to Gary, that would be Mayor Khan arguing that price increase is good for people's health. So that's Gary the cabbie, back in the cab. More of the same, hopefully, Gary, next week.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to ordinary people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, that must be last orders at the bar. And tonight I'm joined by the very lovely Lady Victoria Hervey.
Hello, thank you for having me.
That's the right pronoun, isn't it, lady?
That is. I don't really do the pronoun thing, but
Okay.
if we do it, that's it.
Let's talk about the press and the royals. Has the press been a little bit harsh on Meghan?
You know, if you asked me that a couple of years ago, I would have said, yeah, they have been really harsh on her. But I think that everything that has come out with a lot of the fake stories that she has put out in the media, like the fake car chase, these are all things to gain sympathy that have backfired. So does one really feel sorry for that?
Well, I was actually, I'll let you into a secret, Victoria. I was actually in New York with the NYPD on a trip when the alleged car chase took place. And they told us that it's impossible to have a car chase in New York because the traffic's bumper to bumper.
Right.
And it took an age. So why would she do that? Playing the victim?
So playing the victim card, and this is a very woke thing. This is the victim that they like to always become the victim to gain sympathy.
But why? What does it achieve, getting that sympathy?
Well, I don't think it has done anything for her particularly. But Harry as well, like he's just a bit of a moaner.
Yeah.
And people don't like that.
You see, Harry used to be a firm favourite into the royal
He
family.
was.
I used to love Harry.
People loved him.
And as a great lad, bit of a lad, you know, does his duty for the country. You know, he's the sort of lad you could go and have a pint with and have a laugh with. And then you look at
whinges.
Yeah, I mean, and I look at Meghan. I think a lot of the British public actually feel that Harry's been taken away from us.
Well, he has. I think literally that word taken, like his mind has been taken and completely brainwashed by her. I don't think he has his own identity anymore. It's all her. I think she pulls all the strings and about like what he does, how he acts, who he sees. And it's really sad actually to see someone like him who was so outgoing and so loved by this country.
Let's talk about his uncle.
Right.
Andrew, is he going to make a return to being what they call a working royal at some stage?
Will he become a working royal? I think, let's see. I think things will probably change in the public domain, how the public does think about him as more and more comes out. Hopefully that will be a way back for him.
So a lot has happened to the royal family over the past 5-10 years. We've no longer got a queen, which was probably left a massive hole in the whole of the country. But is it time, Victoria, do you think, to modernise the royal family?
Well, I think the royal family is modernised. Right. I think William and Kate are doing a really good job. I think they're very popular. Obviously, like Charles, you know, he waited for this role of his lifetime. He's waited a long, long time for it. And I think it will be easier when it is time for William and Kate to take over. I think the younger generation, the appeal of William is more than Charles. I don't think the younger people really connect with Charles as much as they do with William.
Because he's got the fairy tale princess at the side of him, hasn't he? So,
exactly, who was, you know, a normal girl, you know, not titled from a you know, middle class background, and she's living the fairy tale.
So we've got Wokey of the Week, Victoria.
Okay,
I know you're looking
this?
forward to this. This is where we've got 3 woke organisations or people that's probably done something outrageous or silly throughout the week. And the first one we've got is the Royal British Legion. Now they're saying that they can't sell poppies in Brighton because they've got no organisers to go out and sort out the poppy sellers on the street. Now, I'm thinking to myself, they've had about 100 years' notice for this.
Right, I mean, this is something that happens every single year. So how did they not figure that out? That seems like a very lame excuse. Who are the other 2?
And they get enough money, by the way.
Right.
The other one is I don't know how to do this without swearing. It's the list. So I guess you're going to bleep that out. But this is a list of 50 people
Yeah.
who the magazine, I think, called the New European, have decided that these are the worst people in the country for whatever reason. Now, I'm pleased to announce that I'm on that list.
Oh.
I'm number 4. In fact, I'm on it twice.
Actually, I think it's probably like a big thing to actually get on that list. It's like, well done.
It's a badge of
It
honour.
means that you have affected people in a way. And so they are showing it.
And also on the list, we've got James O'Brien. He's he calls himself a broadcaster, a journalist, but he's a nuisance. He presents a show on LBC, and he seems to make this list every week. I think he's won it once. He spends his time having a go at people like me and some of my colleagues in Parliament, and he's just an irritating little man. I hope you're watching this, James. So you've got 3. You've got 3 to pick from. You've got the RBO, you've got the list, bleep that out, and you've got James O'Brien.
Right,
What do you
gosh,
reckon,
who would I
Victoria?
have? The wokey of the week. I don't know, James O'Brien seems like the most annoying.
Well, I'll go with that, James O'Brien. You are wokey of the week. While we're on the subject, Victoria, of royals, is there a bit of wokery in the royal family, do you think?
Is there? A little bit. I think the fact that, the Queen never meddled with anything besides her sort of role. She stayed away from politics, talking about things that climate change thing is a big thing. And
So is Charles still talking to plants and flowers, do you think? I don't know.
I don't know. He likes to garden. I hear that. I hear that he does like his gardening.
Yeah.
I wish he would stay away from that whole climate change talk.
Okay.
That would be...
Right, we've got you behind the bar for a reason. So we've got a pint pot.
I've never done this before, by the way.
Okay, you've
No,
got a pump.
I haven't.
And you've got to pull it. You've got to pull a pint in 30 seconds. No cheating. There's no blowing the froth
30
off.
seconds.
30 seconds, and then when it's full, you have to bang it on the bar, and then we'll get the crew.
Okay,
to
just tell me
actually-
when are we going to... Okay,
Go
can
for
we
it.
do a countdown?
No, you can go for it now. Just pull the
Okay.
tap back.
Okay.
Put the pint pot in.
Okay.
Hey, that's not bad actually. I think you went a little bit too quick there. Oh,
Ooh,
wow! You've got to fill it right to the top.
I know.
Normally we have 2 people doing this, but
Right.
okay. So I'll put that on the bar,
That?
and yeah, it's not very good, is it?
Is that not good?
No, it's not good. That's you would probably.
I did it
get-
too fast.
Yeah, I mean,
Can I try one more?
go for it again.
Okay. All
I
right.
mean, if they served that to somebody, Victoria, I think they'd probably not come back in the pub. They'd probably leave, and you'd be probably leaving shortly after with your cards.
Oh no! Why is it?
Oh dear.
Why is it doing this?
No, it's, well, I think actually that's probably worse than the first one.
Yeah.
A little bit quicker.
Is it just too slow now?
Okay, you've got it right to the top. So, wow. I mean, you've done the impossible. You've actually done the impossible.
I don't see I'm be getting
So
a job
ask somebody in the
pub.
crew to actually mark that.
This one is not good.
What do we think, guys? In fact, you can mark both and then we'll add them together, and I still don't think you'll get one. So,
Did I do it too slowly?
I don't know, darling.
Too
but,
fast?
Victoria,
This
Lady
is not
Victoria.
bad.
You've got 2 for the 2.
Okay, I'm not going to be working in a pub.
It's a shocker. You're going on the board. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Take care.
All right.
Thanks for watching Lee Anderson's Real World. Back at the same time next week, Friday, 7 p.m. on GB News. I've got Stephen Pound, the former Labour MP. He's returning. Former Conservative MP and barrister Jerry Hayes is coming on the show. But Patrick Christie's on next. Patrick, what are we up to?
Well, fantastic show, Lee. Thank you very much. Terrible pints, though, but there we go. Right, OK, so I've got an hour of a sideways look at the week's news coming your way. We're going to be taking a look at whether or not Rishi Sunak would get a letter of no confidence from you. You can take part in our poll at GB News on Twitter. We've got some of the regular features as well, including a look at a nun going absolutely crazy, a clown wreaking havoc up in Scotland, and a tortoise being found in a very unusual place. Stay tuned.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Babette continues to cause problems. Further heavy rain is expected to cause more flooding, and we do have a red weather warning in place from midnight again for parts of eastern Scotland, but there are other weather warnings in place through the night. The weather's been causing problems across England and Wales through the day. The rain's slowly easing here, but it will stay very soggy in most locations through into the early hours. Something a bit drier across the southeast where temperatures hold up up at 11 or 12. Elsewhere will be mostly down into single figures. But we do have to focus in on the rain because it's returning tonight over eastern Scotland and then it lasts for most of the day. It's already caused significant problems, and this further rain falling during tomorrow, another 100 millimetres possibly, is expected to cause more widespread disruption and, of course, further flooding. That stiff wind will just continue to feed in the moisture here. A drier day across northeast England tomorrow and for parts of Wales as well. There will still be some heavy showers, though, in the southeast and some gusty winds blowing here too. Temperatures mostly getting up into the low to maybe mid-teens. Sunday offers some respite. There will be still some rain across Scotland, but it should tend to ease and it won't be as heavy or as persistent. A few scattered showers elsewhere, but for many Sundays, a fine-looking day, dry and bright with some sunny spells. The winds will be lighter as well, and it'll probably just feel a little bit warmer. Please see the Met Office website for the latest warnings.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome